What's going on, guys? Welcome to the Upper Hand Fantasy Podcast. I'm Faraz. I'm here with Zach. We got a lot to talk about when it comes to what happened in Week 13. Week 14 is right around the corner. We got one more game tonight, Monday Night Football, Saints and Bucks. And then we got Week 14, the week that determines it all of whether we're going to make it to the fantasy football playoffs or not. Literally, like, everyone who listens to this podcast, me and you, Zach.
Yeah.
We spend a lot of time on fantasy football. And when we don't make the playoffs, kind of sucks a little bit because, it's a bad look because it's like, what have you been doing with all this time that you could have been putting somewhere else, put it to better use, Hey, man, listen, like for me, the only way I could justify playing this much fantasy football to my wife is by creating a business around it. Like that was the only way.
Right. No, I hear you completely.
For me, that's the only way I could justify it.
That's what we did. So that's awesome. But the old adage, I'm gonna be probably in a win in your in scenario in our league. I guess the old adage, coaches don't play. I mean, we just hear coaching everybody up, and we don't have much to show for it. I will say, in the followers league, I'm doing all right. But that one I don't have any money riding on. That was just for bragging rights or whatever. I'm doing all right in that league. And then in the important league that we have, the only league that matters, aptly named. Like I said, it's winning you're in. And then my one league with my other friends, I'm just doing terrible. I haven't had any luck. Lamar Jackson just went down. The hits just keep coming. So it's fun. Yeah, we play a lot of fantasy football here. I think we get caught up in it sometimes. Like you said, we overthink it. We overanalyze. And then that's happened a couple of times this season to me. And I think to you, like you said, you overanalyze. You kept Christian Watson out. That 1 week, I remember you said you were tilting. That was the one highlight that I remember of this podcast so far this season.
I was tilting, and you know what? I'm glad at least I have Christian Watson, right? Because Christian Watson since then has absolutely been killing it, right? And we'll get there. We'll talk Christian Watson, but I want to talk about the Jets first. Can we talk about the Jets real quick?
Yeah, no problem.
Because listen.
Yeah.
My Jets, like they were in the game, right? They went down a little early, right? I think it was 17-3 early in the game, but they came back. They made this a game. They almost had a chance to win at the very end. Mike White threw for 369 yards, against the Vikings. This was the Vikings. I get it, but I don't see this quarterback situation changing at all. Moving forward, like as of right now, like Mike White's looking like a very capable quarterback. Despite the 2 interceptions, I think one was like a tight window. They got, tipped, and then the safety got the interception. And the other one was like at the very end of the game when they were trying to win it. They were in the red zone, and it was 4th down. He had to throw it in there. He had to throw it up into the end zone, and it got picked. So the Jets did have a chance to win at the end. They almost came through. It didn't happen. But Garrett Wilson, another great game with Mike White. 15 targets, 8 catches, 162 yards. He almost had another huge touchdown play if Mike White didn't overthrow him by a little bit.
Yeah. That one hurt watching.
That one hurt. If you had Garrett Wilson, you're just like, oh my God. That would have been a 40-point game right there. But he's an alpha wide receiver, in the NFL already. And the schedule the rest of the way is pretty good. And I think he's a wide receiver to start, the rest of the way, just like we ranked him as a wide receiver 2 this past week. And you got Buffalo next week, which I'm not scared about that matchup at all. That's a solid matchup. Detroit, Jacksonville, and Seattle. He could be, not only is he bringing people to the playoffs, but he could win people championships.
Yeah, that's a perfect schedule. If you're, Garrett Wilson, that's a bunch of shootouts probably going to be. I mean, the Bills defense, for all they're cracked up to be, they've been actually allowing a lot of points, recently. So they're not the same, I don't think, without Von Miller. It looks like they're going to be a little bit more vulnerable to these playmakers. And the Jets offense, like I said, you talk about Mike White. I don't see this quarterback situation changing at all. I think they should ride Mike White to the end because this game, they were competitive in this game. I bet if Zach Wilson plays, they're not even competitive. I bet they put up 10 points max. And, obviously we can, look at the game that he started last, Zach Wilson. It was just an abomination, that maybe we give him a little bit more of a bad rap than he deserves because he is still a young quarterback. But the fact is Mike White's doing his thing. And he's making this offense relevant. I thought the Jets should have won. I mean, they were down, was it 3 times in the red zone in the last like 6 minutes? It might have been 2 times, I don't know, but they had a bunch of chances down in the red zone, and I think they had like 2 goal line stands from Minnesota. It was ridiculous. They were inches away from a win, and it's not like the Jets are a bad team. They're definitely going to be continuing to compete, but with Mike White and Garrett Wilson, like you said, he was obviously, an alpha wide receiver in the league. He just wasn't getting the production, but now the production's there because Mike White throws the ball to the playmakers. And like you said, we're going to talk about here soon, even Corey Davis and Elijah Moore were getting in on the fun, even though they weren't necessarily catching a bunch of passes. They were definitely involved. And it looks like Mike White's going to make them relevant moving forward too.
Yeah. And you mentioned Corey Davis. I think he needs to be paid attention to as well. He's coming back from an injury. He saw 10 targets in this game. Now, 10 targets is a great number, but keep in mind that Mike White threw it 57 times. So, it's only a 17.5% target share. But he has 75% route participation, which is solid. You know who else had a 75% route participation? Elijah Moore.
Yeah.
But only 2 catches for 7 yards on 6 targets. So, womp womp. But I'm still paying attention to Elijah Moore. Seems like based on that usage right there, he's out of the doghouse, which is kind of what you want to see. So I think he is worth rostering at this point. I think if he's on waivers, I don't think we really have to spend much to get him because he didn't do anything in this game. But I think he's worth putting on benches to see what happens moving forward. I mentioned the schedule. We know his talent. And, maybe I'm beating a dead horse here. Who knows? But the usage hasn't been this high in terms of route participation since like week 6.
Right. Do you think Elijah Moore being in the doghouse is more of a problem with him requesting a trade, or do you think it was Zach Wilson all along? Because, I mean, obviously he's getting more playing time. He's not, like lighting it up with Mike White, but he's definitely getting more looks. Obviously he scored last week. He's looked better than he has all season with Mike White at quarterback. Do you think Zach Wilson was a problem? Because it seems like he's doing better.
I don't think so. I don't think it was a problem. I think in terms of route participation, it came directly after he that trade request did not sit well with the locker room, with the coaches, with anybody. And the next game, he didn't play. They sat him in that game. He was inactive. The game after that, he played just a handful of snaps. And then it just went up just by a hair, every game. And then now finally he's back. So it reminds me of what Kyle Shanahan did with Brandon Ayuk last year. And that's why I'm calling for a Brandon Ayuk career arc for Elijah Moore. And I think next year, I think he can do his thing just like Ayuk is right now. And I think you never know, man. In the fantasy playoffs, I wouldn't be surprised if Moore starts putting up numbers based on the fact that, he's getting more playing time. And he hasn't seen this much playing time for a couple months now. So, if Zach Wilson was quarterback right now and he was getting this type of usage, I would not care. Like, I would leave him on waivers. But the fact that Mike White, is capable of putting up numbers and, making his wide receivers fantasy relevant, then it piques my interest a little bit.
Yeah, something about Jets quarterbacks and throwing the ball over 50 times. Joe Flacco's doing it, earlier this season out to Mike White. But the thing is, 50 attempts, you'd think it was like all garbage time. But this was, like quality, targets. They're not just chucking up downfield and they're not inflating targets by throwing it downfield and that's all they're getting. They're not actually catching any passes. They were moving the ball. Like you said, Mike White threw for 369 yards. If I'm not mistaken, I think it was 505 yards total as a team that the Jets had, or something over 500 yards. Like, of course, that's Minnesota's defense, but this offense where it was a wasteland, just 2 weeks ago, is suddenly super fancy conducive with Mike White, and he's made all the difference for these receivers.
Another guy who might make a difference is Zonovan Knight. 15 carries for 90 yards, caught all 5 of his targets for 28 yards, 20 touches, 55% of snaps. This is kind of what I expected coming into this game, and he was efficient against a rushing defense who was not letting running backs be efficient on a per carry basis against them. James Robinson had only 4 carries for 10 yards in this game. He was a non-factor. Ty Johnson, 1 carry, 7 targets, so he is being used in the pass game. But the Jets had 4 goal line snaps in this game. Knight saw all of them. He even had 40% of the 2-minute work. So he's a solid RB2 next week against Buffalo if Michael Carter misses again. Carter didn't practice at all last week. He was pretty much ruled out early, relatively. He wasn't a game time decision or anything like that. It's possible he's out again this week, but when Carter's back, even if it's this week, whatever, I wouldn't be surprised if Knight continues to be the lead back here.
Yeah, I can see him holding on to the same workload that he had this week. Michael Carter might replace what Ty Johnson did, and obviously, I think maybe Michael Carter gets more than one carry, but
Sure.
he's gonna be supplementary in the receiving and ground game. But Zonovan Knight, I think he's done enough. He should be one of at least, if at many, two running backs in this backfield. Instead of getting the majority of the reps. Like Zonovan Knight, he looked really good. I think if you take Ty Johnson's workload and you give that to Zonovan Knight, you're looking at like a 24 point, 25 point performance, and that would be humongous. We'd be ranking him maybe as a low end RB1. But right now, just because there's that ambiguity with who's going to be starting in the backfield, he's going to have to be an RB2, for next week. But like we said, their matchup next week isn't that bad. James Robinson was a non-factor. That was kind of disappointing for me. I just feel bad for James Robinson. I keep saying this every time. He gets like a couple carries and that's it. But they traded for him, and it doesn't look like they're going to use him now because they discovered Zonovan Knight. And obviously, I think Zonovan Knight, the youth and his, dynamic ability is better than James Robinson. He deserves to be leading the backfield. So, yeah, as long as his offense continues to play like it has been, even though they lost this game to Minnesota, there's no reason not to think that he can't get it done for you, especially if you pick him up on the waivers. You're psyched. This guy's going to help you run to the playoffs.
Even if he gets like 15 touches and then we know that he's getting all the goal line work on an offense that's improving, we talked about the matchups. There's going to be a lot of scoring. He could be, even when Michael Carter comes back, he could still be used. So I'm excited to see what he can do rest of season. Najee Harris came back. He seemed healthy. Apparently, 68% of snaps. This split turned into, what it was before Najee and Warren got hurt. But Najee handled all of the early down and goal line work, and Jaylen Warren handled the passing downs, which is basically the role that they had before. And in Najee's last 3 games, he's averaged 4.5 yards a carry or more. And that's his last 3 healthy games, I should say.
Yeah.
Because he didn't do that the week before. But he's a low-end RB2 moving forward. But unfortunately, he won't be one next week in my rankings against Baltimore. I would probably be avoiding that offense in general next week.
Yeah, the offense with the Steelers, it's not going to be super fancy conducive. You're not going to have a bunch of big performers from this on a weekly basis. But Najee Harris, it just sucks because before the injury that kind of took him out of the game, for a little bit, he was looking more like Najee Harris of yesteryear. And now he's been knocked down the totem pole. He's now back to his token 10 points per week. That's really disappointing. I was upset to see that. The only thing is, though, he did look, like you said, much better on the carries that he got. He didn't get a whole lot of receiving work, so that kind of, strung him down a little bit. But did you see that stiff arm that he laid on Richie Grant?
Ooh.
Did you see that?
Yeah, nasty.
That was crazy.
Nasty.
Yeah. So he's definitely still got that capability. We know what he can do. He has that capability to be the running back that he was last season. But I was kind of surprised, that he came out and didn't do better because it wasn't a bad matchup. But like I said, he gave you 10 points. That's what you've been expecting from him all season, and that's what he's going to continue to do. I don't think he's going to be ranked. I think his ceiling is right back where it was, where he talked about. I think his ceiling is like mid RB2, and that's a high. Yeah. That's like the high point now. But Jaylen Warren. Go ahead.
If I can get high end RB2 out of Najee, that's like a miracle.
Yeah, that's a miracle. That's what I'm saying.
Especially because Jaylen Warren is getting the passing down snaps. Like, a lot of the value that Najee had last year was, because of the fact that he was playing like 95% of snaps and getting all the work.
Remember, he got, was it 84 targets, 74 receptions? Like, that was heavily, it looks like now it's heavily inflating his value. It looked like that was just a nice part of his game. That might have been inflating his value, because we talked about it last season that he wasn't efficient on the ground. And now he's starting to look a little bit more efficient these last few games. But, the receiving work hasn't been there, and that's come through. And we've seen that with Najee, that he hasn't had that upside at all this season. He had one good game against Cincinnati in terms of fantasy output. But outside of that, he's been pretty much a non-factor.
Something interesting happened in this game with Pat Freiermuth. His route participation plummeted. It's actually, low-key, gone down a little bit just by a hair each of the last 2 weeks. It wasn't too concerning. It went down to 71% last week. And then yesterday on Sunday, it went all the way down to 55% route participation. Zach Gentry, for whatever reason, ran a bunch of routes in this game with Freiermuth off the field. So just when you thought you had a good thing, right? You have a tight end, you're starting every single week. And, the production was okay this week. because he did have that big catch, broke a tackle, and was able to like run up that sideline for a big play. But if that didn't happen, you're not looking at a decent week. But hopefully this goes back up next week. Hopefully this is a 1-game blip. But if the route participation stays around 55%, even 60%, that's not good. Like, we don't want him to fall into the tier of tight end streamers. Like, Freiermuth is very talented, but talent doesn't always overcome this type of thing.
Yeah, it doesn't overcome Matt Canada and this offense. It's just not good. With the Steelers, he's obviously, they have other weapons, in the receiving game. They have Deontay Johnson, they have George Pickens, but Zach Gentry, what is he doing on the field over Pat Freiermuth? And like we said, running routes. I get it if you bring Zach Gentry on the field and that inflates his snap count to be a blocker. Maybe he's a better blocker. But Pat Freiermuth, he's like, I don't want to say your best weapon, but maybe your most reliable weapon just because of his size and the way that he operates. He's a very reliable receiver. And even though he had this low snap count, he still finished. He's in line to finish as a tight end 7 this week. It's still a tight end 1 finish because he had 76 yards on just 3 catches. But his target share has gone way down these past few weeks. From week 7 to 11, he had 9, 7, 7, and 12 targets. And then the past 2 weeks, he has 9 total. I don't know what's going on with the offense. It hasn't really nothing has really changed. That's making me think that there's something that's causing this underlying thing that we're going to be able to determine whether it's going to go up or not. But we definitely need to see this, snap share go back up, because if it doesn't, like you said, it's going to be a collection, like just an absolute collection of players in the streaming scene for the tight end position. It's just ridiculous. And with all the injuries now to tight ends too, it's just like there's nobody left.
Seriously, you're just grasping at straws at this point.
Yeah.
Courtland Sutton, he had a hamstring injury in this game, the Broncos game, and Jerry Jeudy is back. He's a little bit banged up as well. He didn't see a full-time role. He was on the snap count. But the injury to Sutton means that, Jeudy can potentially be the guy moving forward, be pretty fantasy relevant. Like, this offense isn't good, but in a PPR leagues, like, he could be a solid wide receiver 3. I don't think he has a huge ceiling, but he could have a floor of 12 to 13 points in PPR, and then anything more than that, great. Greg Dulcich ended up leading the team in targets with 8. He does run a lot of routes. He's been high in that route participation category. He's been quiet lately over the past couple of weeks before this week, but he's definitely worth rostering if anyone dropped him like me in my league last week. So
right.
A good matchups though for these guys the next 2 weeks against Kansas City and Arizona.
Yeah, no, I hear it. And if you're like Faraz and you dropped him, you can't blame you, because you look at his past 3 weeks. Before this, it was 2 points, 7 points, 3 points in PPR. Like, you're not keeping that on your team, especially with the way.
What about the route participation, Zach? What about the route participation?
This is the Broncos offense we're talking about. I don't care if his route participation is 200% in a week. It's not going to change the fact he could get all those routes. He could run all those routes. He might get 5 quality targets. That's the problem. Seriously. So Greg Dulcich, he looked better. There's no telling what's going to happen in this offense on any given week. The only thing that's consistent is Latavius Murray getting 8 to 11 points. Russell Wilson just doesn't look good. The receivers are banged up, with Jerry Jeudy and Courtland Sutton. It makes sense that he's going to see this uptick in targets. But I'm not relying on, what's his name, Greg Dulcich, the rest of the way, and expecting him to have this type of production the rest of the way. This was one of his better games, and he looked good to start, but this offense is just not good enough to have guys that are going to be contributors down the stretch. Jerry Jeudy, you could take a shot on, like you said, as a wide receiver 3. I think his upside caps out at low wide receiver 2. That's about where I put him. But Courtland Sutton, man, if you had him, and I have him in one league and my brother has him in another league, Courtland Sutton just screwed you over this week. And he's been doing it the past few weeks too, just because this offense is that bad. I don't blame Sutton. He got injured and the offense is terrible, but not a good look. If you have any Broncos players, you're hurting.
Lamar Jackson, he left the game with a knee injury. He could miss time. It's not a season-ending injury. Maybe a PCL. We haven't heard any details on that just yet. But Tyler Huntley came in. He completed 27 of 32 passes, super efficient against this Denver Broncos defense. He also had 10 carries for 41 yards and a touchdown. He's worth a pickup. Super flex, 2 quarterback leagues. Just burn all your remaining fab on him, especially if you need wins the next couple of weeks. We'll see how long Lamar is out for, but I'm assuming he's going to be out for a little bit. Hopefully we get some specifics at some point today. In regular one quarterback leagues, he's also worth a waiver wire pickup. He'll probably be in my top 12, quarterbacks for week 14 against Pittsburgh. You saw what he did, 27 of 32 passes against Denver. Like,
that's good. Yeah.
That's good. And then you're gonna pick up another. He's so under, and we've been talking about him a lot, this season. Just him, we want to listen. We both love Lamar. We're both fans of Lamar, but we're just aware of how good Huntley can be, in real life and for fantasy. So, he's somebody that if you lost Lamar this week, he's the guy I'd be targeting.
He could be 1-for-1 replacement for Lamar, and we've seen that. 16.
And all the people who have Justin Fields like you on bye this week as well. Like that's somebody that they should be targeting on waivers as well.
Yeah, except I only have $8 of fab left. That's too bad. Anyway, that's a story for another time. If I make the playoffs, you won't hear that story. But if I miss the playoffs, you'll hear the story on this podcast about my demise. But anyway, like I said, story for a different time. Tyler Huntley, though, definitely, like I said, he's a 1-for-1 replacement for Lamar. In terms of production for fantasy, yeah, I think you could say that too. I mean, look, he had the rushing upside, 41 yards on 10 carries and a touchdown on the ground to supplement really efficient passing. Like that's all you're asking for out of this offense. And this is in a game where the Ravens didn't score until the last drive. And this is on like 2 minutes. Is that what it was? It was bad. Obviously, Denver's a good defense, but moving forward, Tyler Huntley, he's going to be a nice piece for you moving forward. He's just, I don't want to call him just as dynamic as Lamar, but he's very dynamic like Lamar. He's as close as you can get to Lamar in a backup in the league. And it's funny that the Ravens have two guys that can do pretty much the exact same thing. They don't have to change this offense at all. Tyler Huntley can run it. We saw that on the last play where he ran in for the touchdown. It was a very Lamar-esque draw play for the quarterback. He looked great. So definitely pick him up. There's no reason to leave him on the waivers. Especially if you, like you said, if you're missing Justin Fields, but even if you have guys that just haven't been playing well recently and they have a low ceiling, low floor, just go get him. He has upside. He can be a top 12 play, regardless of who, you might have on your team. Like Tom Brady, if I have Tom Brady, I'm going to get him. If I have, I don't know, I would say Jimmy Garoppolo if he was still playing. I would say go get Tyler Huntley, but obviously he's not.
We'll talk about that later. Yeah, a lot of people had Jimmy G in 2 quarterback leagues and Superflex leagues, and they were chilling with him as their QB2. But now, yeah, he's another guy that a lot of people have to go after. By the way, if you have Mark Andrews, you kind of low-key excited for Tyler Huntley, because if you look at the games, Adam Levitan from Established to Run just posted about a couple hours ago. We knew that Andrews, was doing his thing with Huntley last season, but here are the game logs with Tyler Huntley for Mark Andrews last year. 8 for 73, 11 for 115 and a touchdown, 10 for 136 and 2 touchdowns, 6 for 89, 8 for 85, and then yesterday 4 for 53. So
yeah,
pretty good. So maybe the next couple of games, if let's say Lamar is out for the next 2-3 games, it's possible that Mark Andrews ends up being a positive benefactor from this injury.
Yeah, we have a league winner at tight end,
and it's Mark Andrews.
He's been doing fine for you this season anyway. Just compared to the rest of the field, but you haven't enjoyed the production like you have recently, or like what you like to see recently from Mark Andrews. This could be a thing. We've seen odd things like this happen before. Like you said, Tyler Huntley would come in. And I think there are, like you said, even more stats than just that to back up that Tyler Huntley is a better quarterback for fantasy for Mark Andrews than Lamar Jackson. I forget what those numbers are, but I remember seeing that even last season. So it's pretty funny.
Well, we posted about it.
Get a bump. Yeah,
we posted about it.
Yeah, we did.
And
yeah, we did.
It was one of my bases for not taking Mark Andrews in the second round. And yeah, I think that was the right decision.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it makes a whole lot of sense to take tight ends very high unless it's Travis Kelce. And I was kind of just avoiding tight ends. I said, just take your shots on the back end coming in this season. Take your shots on the back end of tight ends. Don't worry about it, because nobody outside of Travis Kelce, maybe Mark Andrews, is going to be, a difference maker. Although I took a shot on Kyle Pitts. That fell out for me. But regardless, tight end, it's not a deep position at all. And like we said, with the way we've seen injuries, thin them out. It's funny. we shouldn't be taking Mark Andrews that high. I don't think that it's going into the next year either. I think tight ends, we're going to see their stock in drafts next season just kind of fall completely off unless Travis Kelce. Travis Kelce is going to stay in the top round, round 1.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm really curious to see how the market reacts to this season because it's been a bad year for tight ends.
Horrific.
That Baltimore backfield though, like, yeah, like Drake had 7 carries, Gus Edwards had 6. You can't trust anybody right now in that backfield. It's possible we see J.K. Dobbins back this upcoming week, but even him, like, I'm going to be avoiding this whole backfield, including Dobbins, including Edwards, including everybody.
I would give Dobbins benefit of the doubt. That's just me, just to see what he can do.
You would start him? Like, where would you have him?
Oh, I'm not saying I would start him over guys like, if you have guys that are doing well for you. I'm not sure I'd even start him over Jeff Wilson, but we'll see. I think J.K. Dobbins is the most talented by far in this backfield. Obviously he's dealt with injuries and that's kind of hurt him, but I'm not sure the usage is going to be there either. If you're in a bad spot, I would see maybe starting J.K. Dobbins just as a upside play. But Justice Hill, he shouldn't be getting touches with Gus Edwards and J.K. Dobbins there. I'd argue Kenyon Drake shouldn't be getting touches as many as he did even last week, even though it was only 7 carries on the ground with J.K. Dobbins back. So I think J.K. Dobbins, you could shoot your shot, throw a dart at J.K. Dobbins next week if you're in a bad spot. But yeah, I wouldn't set my expectations too high for him, but I wouldn't just, count him out because J.K. Dobbins, he's a good running back and a good running scheme. I think he can do all right.
We've seen this backfield do too many crazy things. I can't deal with it. Not week 14. Not week 14.
Yeah.
I can't do it. I'm not putting my playoff hopes on the line. I'd rather take my shot elsewhere. I don't know. But yeah, no, I get it. Let's see. Let's see if he practices this week. And
sometimes that's what it comes
down to.
Yeah,
sometimes it is what it is. Like, if you're desperate at your flex spot and you're like, all right, well, I need some upside. I get it. He could get 2 goal line touchdowns. You never know.
Yeah.
A.J. Dillon ended up having a big week with Aaron Jones getting banged up with a shin injury. Jones came back in the game eventually, but played only 5 snaps in the 4th quarter. So hopefully he doesn't miss any time. The Packers are on bye in week 14. So that's good. If you have Aaron Jones, you're like, all right, well, yeah, at least like even if he is hurt, maybe he has a week to kind of rest up, and then I don't have to worry about it. And then he'll be good to go in week 15. And if you have Aaron Jones, hopefully you already made the playoffs.
Yeah. You weren't with Aaron Jones. This injury actually comes at an all right time if it's going to come at all, because you weren't going to have him anyway next week. So it's like, exactly, you're not hurting too much. You were expecting going into this game not to have him next week. So you're not, it's a net change in value of 0 at this point, unless it becomes a more, impactful injury, which we'll find out.
But if you have Christian Watson, right?
Yeah.
You ain't going to have him. And boy, will you miss him, because that's at least a touchdown or 2 taken off your fantasy points total next week, right? Like, another 2 touchdowns on Sunday from Christian Watson. This is his 3rd multi-touchdown game in 4 weeks. You know who else has done that in the last 4 weeks? Devontae Adams.
Yeah.
He's also pretty good.
Yeah, he's pretty good.
He's pretty good. The Packers were like, how, can we try to get Watson to score like every possible way? Like, he hasn't scored a touchdown on the ground yet. So like, they give him one carry in this game, and he goes ahead and scores a 46-yard rushing touchdown on an end around. So
yep,
he's a must start once the fantasy playoffs come around in week 15. You must have had some really, really good options if you didn't start Christian Watson this week. And it's amazing to me the types of questions I've received about Christian Watson, like start-sit questions around Justin Watson going into this week. And it's just like, let's not overthink it here. I'm a guy who loves to look at utilization and the underlying metrics and all this kind of stuff. But it's like, guys, if dudes are scoring touchdown every week, I get it. Like, is it sustainable? No. But keep doing it. Keep starting him until he stops. And even when he stops for that one game, start him again the following week. Because like, at the end of the day, we're trying to get fantasy points here, and Christian Watson continues to do his thing. So what is that? 8 touchdowns in 4 weeks.
In 4 games. Yeah, and we did a post on that too, because it's just ridiculous. And like I say, it's not just receiving touchdowns, it's scrimmage touchdowns. They might have just unlocked a facet to his game they didn't even know existed. It's called running the ball. Imagine if he gets a couple carries a game too. Like, especially with Aaron Jones maybe missing time. Like, is that out of the question? I don't know. Christian Watson, he's just been ridiculous. And of course, he starts with 3 touchdowns against my Cowboys. But just the rest of the way, he's been scoring touchdowns. You want to call him, oh, Christian Watson, he's touchdown dependent. Once the touchdowns stop coming, like you said, he's not going to be doing anything. Well, he's not touchdown dependent until he doesn't score points, at all. It's just so funny because, like you said, you talk about the underlying metrics. Yes, we could beat that horse all day. But when he's scoring touchdowns, like he is, like, have we seen a player do this? I mean, outside Devontae Adams, have we seen a player this young do this? Like, was Justin Jefferson? Yeah, okay. Randy Moss was doing it. I wasn't alive for him in his rookie season, or I wasn't capable of watching and playing fantasy football. But, like, this is one of the first times, especially after the way the season started, this has come completely out of the blue. He couldn't stay healthy, but now he's healthy and he's just like going crazy. And that's just perfect for Christian Watson. He is definitely, is he a wide receiver 1? The rest of the way? Are you going to have him ranked up there?
I'm not going to have him ranked there. I'm going to have him ranked as like a high wide receiver 2. So there are guys that I'm starting over him, but it's going to be like the elite guys. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's going to be the elite guys.
Here's a question.
Like Garrett Wilson, for example. Like, Garrett Wilson and him are most likely going to be back-to-back in my rankings, with Garrett Wilson 1 spot above him. And that's because I know he's going to get like 10 to 15 targets.
Yeah. Here's a question.
Okay.
Would you start Christian Watson or CeeDee Lamb?
I think I would start CeeDee Lamb.
You think? I mean, I feel like that was really close. And if I was in that position, I would seriously consider Christian Watson.
Yeah, I would consider him too. Like, they are playing the Texans next week. Okay, let's not say next week because Watson's not playing. Yeah. Cowboys are playing the Jaguars the week after. In week 15. Christian Watson's back. The Packers, who are the Packers playing in week 15? The
Packers play the Rams.
The Rams. I might have to go Watson.
You have to go
Watson there.
So yeah, you have to, I would consider in that game. I mean, the Jaguars have looked good, but with the Cowboys, the way they're playing, they seem to pull away and score a lot of different ways that aren't CeeDee Lamb. So I think you look at the game script and the way that the offense has been operating for Dallas, like everyone's just scoring touchdowns. It's not ever focused on one player. And the way Christian Watson's been playing, I would seriously consider that, Christian Watson over CeeDee Lamb.
It's just a really good matchup against the Rams. So like I would definitely want to do that for sure. So yeah, I can see it. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what my rankings look like.
It's interesting. Yeah.
It's close though. It's close. Okay. So what else? Yeah, man. Like, so I'm excited. I'm excited for Christian Watson to see what his career. And I also wanted to mention, for dynasty guys, like don't sell him. Like, don't sell him. I get it. I get the whole thing is like sell high and like, he didn't play in that FCS and all that kind of stuff. But like, I mean, he's from the FCS and all that. I get it. But, 2.3 yards per route run? 2.3 yards per route run this season. That's only behind Garrett Wilson. So I'm not like, this is that's a very good number. And receivers who hit that threshold of 2 yards per route run or higher in their rookie season, with a minimum of 250 routes run, they go on to usually become, perennial wide receiver 1s for a couple of years. So like, I would not do that. I think think Christian Watson's a good wide receiver.
Yeah, it has been all stonks for Christian Watson owners, recently. So that's just hold on to that. There's no reason to, lose out on any potential value. Like, this isn't his ceiling, I don't think. I think he definitely has, more to offer. If he can get more consistent as far as, catching passes, make that production a little bit more consistent. Obviously, touchdowns are great. If he takes that and he just makes it a bit more consistent, he could be a really just fantastic piece. You're not going to want to move off him in Dynasty.
I agree.
For years.
He's still a raw player, and he's not anywhere close to how good he could be.
Yeah.
Justin Fields in that division, he's back. Even though he threw 2 interceptions, he still managed to have a very solid fantasy day because of the 71-yard rushing day. He had he had a touchdown. How long? That was another 50-yard touchdown for him, right?
It was a 55-yard
touchdown. Only 6 carries in this game, so it seems like they chose to take it easy a bit on that shoulder. Cole Kmet, he ran a route on almost every single drop back. He led the team with the Bears with 7 targets. Darnell Mooney was out, right? Obviously, he's out for the rest of the year. So you got to move him back up the tight end rankings moving forward with Fields back. So he was able to get it done for you. Fields is able to get it done for you. Field, they're on a bye this week. But when they come back, like Cole Kmet, if you have him, he should be in your lineup. He's probably a top 6, top 7 tight end the rest of the way. You might want to replace Fry. I'm going to replace Frymuth in my rankings with Cole Kmet. Okay. And Justin Fields, he's a must-start quarterback at this point. Probably top 4 option right now at QB.
Yeah, he definitely is. And Cole Kmet, just talking about him real quick, Justin Fields just makes all the difference for him, and he's going to be relevant just because of Justin Fields. Cole Kmet's going to be a perfect replacement, like you said, for Pat Freiermuth, or if you have other guys, if you have nobody, if you've just been riding out the storm at tight end, if you have Cole Kmet, you're starting him. I think you could set him and forget him. He's actually someone I'd start with confidence as long as Justin Fields is playing. But Justin Fields, I think it kind of flies under the radar. He did have 71 yards on the ground, but 55 of that came on that touchdown carry, and that's all great and well. But outside of that, that was a 5 for 16-yard rushing performance, So take away that touchdown, and suddenly it looks really bad, in terms of production. That touchdown accounted for half of his points, right there. And obviously he was efficient, 20 of 25. He was good, passing the ball. He threw 2 picks, and that hurt him a little bit. But I'm not worried because we know Justin Fields can do that. But I would definitely temper expectations just a little bit because they did definitely dial back the run plays, and he didn't scramble as much in this game as he has in the past. So maybe, he comes back healthier next week and returns to that. But until I see that, I'm just going to kind of be a little leery. He does have the bye, so he should come back extra healthy, and he could get back to that.
That's what I kind of see. Who are you starting in Week 15, Justin Fields or Joe Burrow?
I got to see the matchup for Joe Burrow.
Joe Burrow's going up against Tampa, and Fields,
the Bears are playing the Eagles.
The Eagles.
And the Eagles defense, as good as the Eagles defense as the Eagles as a team are, the defense hasn't been fantastic. I would maybe have to go with Joe Burrow the way he's playing. But Justin Fields,
Burrow has all his weapons back, and he looked good.
All of his weapons.
Yesterday.
Did you see him yesterday? Obviously, we'll talk about this game. He looked just ridiculous, and it's funny. I talked about this with my brother. It's funny. We talked about Joe Burrow being 3-0 against Patrick Mahomes. I said, but yeah. He's 0-1. He's 0-1 against Cooper Rush, though. It's like, what's that about? It's just funny. I don't know. I thought that was funny. I've never seen, like you said, it seems like every time I've seen this, a bunch of commentators are saying about, Patrick Mahomes never looks uncomfortable until he plays the Bengals. So it's weird.
It is weird, man. It is. All right, let's stay in the division. DeAndre Swift is back.
Finally.
He's back. He's now a top 15 running back moving forward. Weekly top 5 upside. Remember the role that, we all drafted DeAndre Swift to have? It's been trending up slowly over the past couple of weeks. He's back in that role that we drafted him to have. 14 carries, 62 yards, and a touchdown. He had more carries than Jamal Williams. That's huge. Caught 4 of 6 targets for 49 yards, 51% of snaps. He had more than 50% of the running back carries. He ran around on 52% of dropbacks. I think that last part should go up even more if they continue to phase out Justin Jackson next week. Justin Jackson was still involved a little bit more than we'd like, but hopefully he just goes away, and it's just a little bit left. So once he goes away and we see 65% route participation from DeAndre Swift, he'll be fully back. But hey, from now on though, DeAndre Swift is in my lineup. Yeah,
absolutely. And like we said, we only needed to see a 50-50 split between Jamal Williams and DeAndre Swift, or anything close to that, for DeAndre Swift to be back to his relevant role. But he went to 50, I think it was 51% snaps. Is that what it was? I think that's what it was. So it was perfect. This is exactly what you wanted to see after seeing, the numbers kind of uptick last week. It was funny because he was quiet for 3 weeks in a row. And then last week, it was like the glimmer of hope. Like we said, you saw the little light at the end of the tunnel. And now it's like that wasn't, an aberration. He's definitely back, and he's going to have this workload the rest of the way. hopefully. I don't see a situation where he doesn't get that. But DeAndre Swift, he looked like vintage DeAndre Swift. And that touchdown was just like the icing on the cake. It was perfect. This is what we want to see from DeAndre Swift. It can continue to go up. I think if he can get to 60% of snaps, I'm not sure if that's going to be possible, but we'll see how it goes. If he gets to 60% of snaps, imagine what he can do. That's going to be huge. And his upside, we know the type of player he is. He doesn't require a whole lot of work to get this type of production. Man, I'm just ecstatic because he's finally back.
And this is a game where the Lions were up the entire time, right? Like,
yeah.
If we're talking about a game where the Lions are down, DeAndre Swift is going to be on the field more. And the fact that they were up in this game in a positive game script and he saw 50% of snaps, that's a good thing. That's what you want to see. So
up in the game,
in a negative game script, it would be even better for him and what his production could look like.
Yeah, up in the game in a positive game script, you'd think, oh, that's Jamal Williams territory. Yeah. They're just going to run him into the middle. No, they were handing it to DeAndre Swift at the end. And obviously, 14 carries isn't a super inflated number, but he, like you said, he out-carried Jamal Williams. That's humongous. That's a big deal, especially with DeAndre Swift, like you said. And that's a good point by you bringing up the game script that they were in. This was an absolute blowout. And just a comment on the game, I thought Jacksonville had more in the tank than that.
Me too.
We know the Lions are playing much better as of late, but a 40-14 throttling, and it wasn't even that close. I didn't expect to see that.
Do you remember the days when we were buying Amon-Ra St. Brown?
Yeah.
Do you remember what we were buying him for? And what people were hesitant to give up for him? Yeah.
Well, yeah. You talked about bad trades all the time about people messaging you about bad trades.
He's a top 5 wide receiver the rest of the season. Caught 11 of 12 targets for 114 yards and 2 touchdowns. Looking like he's about to win leagues for the second year in a row. And how many shows has he been on? How many of our buy sell shows has he been on, like in a row, that we talked about? Hey guys, buy Amon-Ra, buy Amon-Ra, buy Amon-Ra, and the price that you had to pay was nothing. Yeah. Like there are guys that are probably on the waiver wire right now because they don't produce anymore that you could have got Amon-Ra St. Brown for, but you didn't want to give him up because you didn't want to give up your low end RB2 for Amon-Ra St. Brown.
And if you traded away Amon-Ra St. Brown, there's a chance that the guys that you traded for are on the waiver wire right now. You know what I'm saying? And that's just humongous. Like you saw this coming, and I was kind of just riding your coattails on this one about Amon-Ra St. Brown. I was like, yeah, Faraz is right. Just kind of take his advice with Amon-Ra St. Brown. You were bullish on Amon-Ra St. Brown, and now he's had 2 straight top 3 finishes at wide receiver, assuming nobody goes off tonight. It's just ridiculous. The target share that he's getting is ridiculous. It doesn't matter how many times they throw it. He's getting 8, 9, 10 targets a game. He had 12 targets in this one, caught 11 of them. He catches like every single ball that goes his way. I mean, you don't see him
tough.
Yeah.
He's so tough, dude. Like he gets destroyed on these hits. Like, he plays out of the slot a lot. He gets destroyed on these hits, like, up the middle, safety's hitting him, and he gets hurt. He goes out of the game, and you're like, uh-oh. Literally the next play, like he's back on the field. I'm like, this guy is like, his mentality is like, kind of like, I don't know, like Russell Westbrook or something. Like, his mentality is so like that X-ray, like of the dog in him.
The
like,
dog,
like that's literally,
he got that dog.
He has that. He got that dog in him. Like he has like multiple pit bulls in him. Like he's just like that. And I love it. I love watching him play. Another thing about Amon-Ra, how many times is this dude going to get tackled in the 1 yard line? Like,
oh my God,
he scored 2 touchdowns in this game, but I don't remember. Was it? No, Jamal Williams ended up scoring on that play, so he could have had 3 touchdowns.
That was very early in the game. Yeah,
very early in the game. And that catch that he did get tackled on the 1 yard line, like that was a really nice catch. Like it bobbled, and then he caught it, he brought it into his chest, and then got destroyed at the 1 yard line. But there's been so many times this year, at least like 5 or 6 times, where Amon-Ra got stopped at the 1 where he could have had a touchdown. So, it was bound to come back to him. Now he has 3 touchdowns in the last 2 games. Expect it to continue, guys. Like it's a wrap. Like if you have him, and you probably, I traded him for him in like 3 leagues this year, and I didn't have to give up much. In our league that we had together, I had to give up a good amount for him. But at the end of the day, I went up against the guy this week Ricky, the guy who traded me, Amon-Ra St. Brown, and
he's starting Chris Olave tonight. Can Chris
Olave
score 80 points?
I don't think so. I don't think so.
Yeah.
And this was not the week to go up against me with the guy that you traded, Amon-Ra to. It wasn't a good week for that. And if I was him and I was watching this, I would be just destroyed. I would just turn the TV off and leave my house. I wouldn't be able to watch it. But yeah, guys, I hope that worked out for you. Like I seriously do, because Amon-Ra, he's, we talk about Josh Jacobs, right? And we'll get to him in a sec, but we're talking about Josh Jacobs as being the guy you drafted in the 5th or 6th round. Now, don't get me wrong. Like, I was not into Josh Jacobs at all this offseason.
Mm-hmm.
Like that, I did not see this coming for Josh Jacobs. But, everyone right now talking about Josh Jacobs being that league winner that you drafted in the 5th or 6th round. What about Amon-Ra? Amon-Ra was being drafted 6th, 7th round too. So if you drafted him and you held on to him, he's looking like somebody that is going to turn into a league winner as well.
Yeah, absolutely. You talk about, maybe you say he's got that dog in him. And I don't know how many times I heard it on the broadcast, that he's like, didn't he train for Mr. Universe or whatever? Like that kind of stuff.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, no, I think his dad was Mr. Universe or something like that.
That's right.
Yeah.
Something like
so
that. Yep.
That's definitely a family thing, because they probably haven't trained for that. That probably helps him, in terms of being able to take those hits. He's probably very in shape and does what he needs to do. So, I mean, he looks great running out on the field. What he's doing, his production, the way he plays, it's just like I said, very fun to watch. And just to comment on your team, and you talk about buying low, Amon-Ra St. Brown. You were the king of buy low, I think, in this league, because you also went and got Jonathan Taylor. You drafted Christian McCaffrey, right? You didn't trade.
I did.
All right, yeah, I was going to say.
I drafted him.
But anyway,
this was a super flex league, and I drafted Christian McCaffrey in the 1st round. Yeah.
Yeah. So, like I said, you were the king of buy low, but then you also have Christian Watson, like you're the waiver wire warrior and the king of buy. Like, man, your team doesn't look like it did at the beginning of the season,
No,
but sometimes that's what you need to do. Yeah.
I feel like I'm set up nicely here. Like, I'm knocking on wood right now. Hopefully no more injuries. I had a bunch of injuries this year, right? I lost to Trey Lance. I had Hollywood out for a little while. I had Keenan Allen out the whole year. So like I had a few injuries, and I'm hoping that things can kind of come together now, and I can kind of make a little championship run. Now I have to make the playoffs still, like So like you never know. This week helped out because I separated a little bit with points, but you never know what's going to happen. We have so many teams vying for those last couple spots, so you never know what's going to happen next week. But we'll see.
Yeah, I think like every 6-6 team besides like 1 or 2, won. So it's going to be quite a race.
It is.
I think I'm going to stay. Right. Yeah, I think I'm going to stay put. I've been at the 5 spot for the past 3 weeks. I think I'm going to stay there too. So
hey, man,
it's just
as long as you get in.
Yeah.
As long as you get in, that's it. It's a good thing we weren't excited about starting Deshaun Watson this week. He did not look good in his debut, but also the play calling was way too cute in this one. Like, dude, like you're going up against the Texans, just use Nick Chubb. Just use Kareem Hunt. Nick Chubb only had 17 carries in this game. He should have had more. The Browns are just lucky that their defense and the special teams came through. They didn't score an offensive touchdown in this game. But Watson, he's not a top 12 option next week against Cincinnati for me. Like if you kept him for this long after drafting him, it's a good lesson, to be honest. Like how many chances in that time where you've been stashing Deshaun Watson, how many chances did you have this year at having a decent quarterback off the waiver wire? You had a lot of chances. You know what I'm saying? Like you had Geno Smith early on in the year. You had, obviously Justin Fields. You had multiple weeks of potentially trying to grab Justin Fields. There was no reason to be stashing your quarterback for this long. I'm not looking to drop him. Like you can drop him. Like if you have a decent quarterback and you hope that Deshaun Watson was just going to give you a little bit more upside. Like I'm okay dropping him if I have to, but he could be shaking off the cobwebs a little bit. That's what I would assume this is. But this game was not an amazing sign. Like hopefully it'll be, a distant memory, if you were depending on him, to be a solid quarterback for you during this stretch run. Now, Amari Cooper did see 9 targets in this game. This was an away game. So who knows what to attribute the 4 for 40 line to, like either Watson or the fact that it was an away game. But hopefully, everyone who has Amari Cooper is like, give me Jacoby Brissett. Like people who have Nick Chubb is like, hey, come on, like let's sustain some drives here and give me Jacoby Brissett back. because you never know. Jacoby Brissett could have threw for 3 touchdowns against the Texans.
Yeah, you never know. And that's what everybody was thinking. You know, I was sitting there thinking, man, what would this game look like with Jacoby Brissett? And I wasn't ever worried about the Browns losing the game. You know, if things got that bad, maybe we would have seen Jacoby Brissett come back, but they got bailed out by the special teams and defensive play. Regardless, Deshaun Watson, I wouldn't say drop him. I'd say hold on to him because we knew that this first game back was going to be tough. You know, we said they were going to knock off the rust. Like you said, Nick Chubb didn't get nearly enough carries. I don't think at all. You know, he kind of screwed you on your pick 'em too. I know we had him over, was it 96 or 91 rush yards?
He was the only one, man.
He was very close to, you know, making that a perfect card. But with Nick Chubb, he didn't get enough touches. But with Deshaun Watson, you know, how many times did you see him throw the ball and it just landed at their feet or like 2 yards in front of them at their feet? Like,
I saw that.
Like,
I noticed that.
They have hyper gravity on his throws, you know, for that game. It just looked bad. I expected this. I didn't think that he was going to have a humongous game at all. You know, I thought that he would at least throw a touchdown. I thought he'd be more in the 10, 12 point range and not the 6 point range where he finished. But, you know, like you said, you can't say we didn't see it coming. He's out of football for 2 years. There's no reason to, you know, put the whole game on him against a bad Texans team. It was just a forgettable game. And I think that you can forget it. See how he does next week. It's a tough matchup. Cincinnati's defense is no joke. They just handled Patrick Mahomes, and nobody had a big fantasy day. You know, you would expect against this Bengals defense. I think they're a little underrated. You know, obviously they allow some points, but they keep them in the games and make the plays when it counts. And they have playmakers. The pass rushers, Trey Hendrickson, Sam Hubbard. You know, they're not bad. This could be another rough outing for Deshaun Watson next week. So I think you could hold on to him. I think that the upside is still there, but it's not going to be till late, if at all, or next season that we see that.
Now, if Brandon Cooks continues to have issues with his calf that caused him to be out of this game, Nico Collins is worth a pickup. He saw 10 targets this week, a few good matchups coming his way. Just wanted to mention that about the Texans real quick. If there's any fantasy relevance to come out of there, Dameon Pierce had a decent day, but he didn't score, so who cares? I love, let's move away from that game real quick. I love that the Eagles chose to be pass heavy from the get against the Titans. Like, they knew this was a tough rushing defense and a vulnerable passing defense. So from the get, they just went super pass heavy, and I love that. Like, it seems obvious, but most coaches don't do this. Like, this is not what you see. Like, and it seems counterintuitive, but like it is counterintuitive when it comes to like what coaches actually do in the NFL. So Justin Hurts ended up throwing the ball 39 times in this game. You know, in a 35-10 finish, he threw the ball 39 times. Okay, this is not a pass heavy offense. Okay, this is a run first offense. So he threw for 380 yards and 3 touchdowns, and even ran one in. He's a beast, dude. Like, when you ask him to throw the ball, he could throw the ball. You know, like, he's not just a runner. Like, everyone who, you know, doesn't believe in his throwing ability, his passing ability, watch this game and watch what he does in this game. And when you look at all of the metrics that, you know, for a passer in this league, he improved like crazy from last year to this year.
Yeah. And that's just, you know, they have all the weapons, perfect offensive lineup. He's in a perfect situation, and he's very, very talented. I'm not attributing it to that, but, you know, you talk about the people that were questioning whether he could throw it. You know, watch the game, turn on the tape, sit down, and make sure you take a plate of humble pie with you. You know, because Jalen Hurts, he's just looking ridiculous. You know, the way that he's playing has been, you know, top notch. He's throwing it to his playmakers, and they're getting it done. AJ Brown, man, how good must have that felt playing against his old team? They scored 2 touchdowns. Oh, yeah. And did you see the second touchdown? Oh my God.
Nasty.
He was blanketed. I was like, there's no way he catches that. And, you know, obviously.
Well, good on Jalen Hurts for just throwing it to him regardless.
And that's what you do with wide receiver ones in this league. Like, it doesn't matter. Just throw them the ball, especially if they're standing there in the end zone with one guy on them. You know, there's a chance that they could turn that into a touchdown every single time. So I'd say the same thing about a bunch of receivers. You know, Devontae Adams, a couple of weeks, you know, you want to see him get the ball thrown more. Just any type of wide receiver one, you want to throw it to them. But Jalen Hurts, man, just ridiculous, you know, production this whole season. We said that he was going to have this type of season. It's not quite on the level of Lamar Jackson's, you know, MVP season. Remember that, but he's darn close the way that he's playing. He's in terms of fantasy production too. Like, he's just ridiculous. And then the offense overall, top notch, you know, against a good Titans defense, obviously they're not as good against the pass, but they were able to get it done in every phase, and it was just an absolute blowout with the Eagles. So Jalen Hurts, perfect. AJ Brown, perfect game. You couldn't ask for more. Even Miles Sanders got a touchdown, and he didn't have that. He didn't have numbers that were that high either. So This was just a perfect game. If you started them, they did well for you. Even Devontae Smith.
Yeah, and I'd love to see this offense become more pass heavy. I mean, I doubt that will continue just because like next week they have the Giants and then they have Chicago, so I doubt that happens. But I doubt that that's going to be their game plan. But still, like this was good to see. We know what they're capable of. If they have to pass it, they can, which is awesome. On the other side of the ball, Treylon Burks, he caught a 25-yard touchdown. Really impressive catch, given the fact that he got leveled on this catch. It was a bit of a scary hit. But he got up, he walked off on his own power, after a little while. But it is possible that he misses next week.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. It looked like he was on his way. Obviously, it was just one catch, but he definitely would have had more run in that game. He definitely would have had some catches, and he would have been on track to have a similar week as he had the past 2 weeks. The target share was going to be there. He had that touchdown. That was his first receiving touchdown, his true receiving touchdown this season, right? Yes. So I think he easily could have been on track for a big game. Definitely.
Oh yeah.
With what they needed him definitely in this passing game, and I think that showed because after that they couldn't do anything on offense. Even Derrick Henry was getting shut down.
Yep, exactly. The Seahawks passing offense was on fire against the Rams. Geno Smith threw for 367 yards, 3 touchdowns. Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf both went over 8 catches and 120 passing yards. Both had a touchdown. Is what you want to see. This is why they're always back to back in our rankings, because literally every week they're doing the same shit.
Yeah. That's funny because we made like a note of that the last time we went over the rankings. We're like, man, they're back to back for the second time this week. And they did the same, like a catch for 1 yard is what separated these two receivers yesterday. Right. It was hilarious.
Yeah, it is what it is. But in this backfield, it kind of sucks. Kenneth Walker, it's not an ankle sprain, but it's a jammed ankle. Not sure what that is, but
yeah, what?
It's possible that he misses time. We'll see. He's going to get an MRI. They're going to figure that out and then explain to us what that is.
Yep.
But yeah, DJ Dallas was his backup in this game. He himself got hurt with an ankle injury. Travis Homer had a knee injury before this game, so he didn't play. I think so. In the order that I would want these players, like, so if Kenneth Walker plays next week, you're good. You know who to play. If Kenneth Walker is out, I prefer Travis Homer, but we don't even know if he's going to be healthy for next week. Right. DJ Dallas, we don't even know what his status is as of this point. So this is a situation to monitor. We'll have some more on it, hopefully, in tomorrow's podcast. Any news that comes out today, we'll break it down tomorrow on the podcast, or maybe even my Instagram stories and that sort of thing. And we'll keep you guys updated. Don't worry. But hopefully we'll have some sort of answer before waivers tomorrow. But this is a very fluid situation. Now, if all 3 guys are hurt, then Tony Jones would be the next man up. Unfortunately, again, we probably just won't know who is the healthiest until their first injury report on Wednesday. But hopefully we get a little bit more detail by tomorrow.
Hopefully. And there's a very off chance that we hear anything about the podcast now. If it came out now, we tell you about it. But yeah, I think that this backfield, I would pretty much avoid it right now. I don't care if even DJ Dallas, like, obviously you'll start him, but I don't think the upside is very high. I think that he might have, or if it's Travis Homer, it doesn't matter who it is. If it's not Kenneth Walker, I'm not starting them as a low end RB1, high end RB2. It's gonna be like a low end RB2 for me at max, maybe a high end RB3. So I wouldn't invest too much into this backfield, regardless of who starts, unless it's Kenneth Walker playing. And at that point, it's not gonna be able to pick him up off the waiver wire and start him. The offense looks good though. Like you said, DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett did their things. Geno Smith, just love watching him play, just because knowing the story behind him, it's great. But Seattle, they look good. There's no reason to think that they can't continue to do this. If you watched, did you see the game at all? Did you watch DK?
Yeah, Metcalf I did.
Against Jalen Ramsey?
Did you watch I was just going to bring that up. But explain what happened.
It's just hilarious. So he went in motion and Jalen Ramsey was there. I think it was after DK Metcalf had gotten a personal foul or something.
It was before the personal foul. It was before the personal foul. On that same drive. It was before on the same drive when they scored the touchdown. he ended up getting the personal foul after the touchdown, or after he was targeted in the end zone. But yeah, it didn't matter though, because they ended up kicking the kick. Oh, they ended up kicking a field goal on that drive, so it ended up being okay. But yeah, I mean, DK Metcalf did end up scoring the touchdown later on Jalen Ramsey.
Oh, yeah.
DK Metcalf, what happened on this play though?
Yeah, so he went in motion, and when he went in motion, Jalen Ramsey didn't follow him, and then he motioned with his hand for him to follow Jalen Ramsey to follow DK Metcalf when he went in motion. He didn't, and that was just hilarious. Yeah, I wanted so badly for DK Metcalf to win that matchup. Obviously Jalen Ramsey is very good, but DK Metcalf is a freaking transformer, and he's just ridiculous when you see him on the field when he's running around. He runs fast, and he's just this humongous guy. I couldn't imagine covering him. So props to Jalen Ramsey for even picking a fight with him. I would never do that.
Seriously, dude, for real. Yeah, but hopefully we'll get some more answers on this backfield tomorrow. But yeah, it was fun to watch this game. Cam Akers ended up leading the Rams backfield over Kyren Williams. I'm dropping Kyren Williams at this point. Akers had 17 carries, 60 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Probably the best game he's going to have the rest of the year. But he was on the field for 72% of snaps. Kyren Williams literally was the one who had 70% of snaps last week with both these guys healthy. So the backfield literally flipped like on its back. But it's a mess. Like, it's a mess until it's not. Like, who knows? Maybe it flips back. Maybe it's a 50-50 split next week. Who knows? But it was kind of surprising how competitive this game was between the Seahawks and the Rams. Like, this is not what you would expect, because they had so many guys out. Like, I saw like a stat of like how much money that they had off the field. It was like 150 million, something like that. Off the field.
That too. Yep.
Something crazy like that. But they're competitive. So, props to them. I mean, they weren't going to win, but Cam Akers is relevant. He should be rostered. I don't want to start him unless I'm super, super desperate, but maybe he plunges into the end zone. But if he continues to get 70% of the snaps moving forward, you can't ignore that.
Yeah. I mean, Seahawks defense,
even though it's gross.
Yeah, no, the offense is horrific. But if Cam Akers, like you said, a running back on an offense that's horrific, they're going to be running it anyway. So you got to figure, he'll get at least some touches. We saw that yesterday with Cam Akers getting those 2 touchdowns. But yeah, Kyren Williams, you can drop him. I mean, you don't really want any piece of this offense at all with the Rams. And I'm looking at the box score and the stats right now. It's like John Wolford threw 2 interceptions. He only had 178 yards. He completed just over half of his passes. Cam Akers only had 60 yards, but he had 2 touchdowns. No receiver went over, I think, 50 yards. How is this game this close? Like, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. If you look at the box score, it doesn't tell that story. So I was surprised, but it resulted in good things for the Seahawks in terms of fantasy value and production. But I don't want any piece of this Rams offense moving forward. I want 0. Like, I don't even care. Cam Akers, okay, cool. He had 19 points for you this week. I'm not counting on that every week. He's liable to go down to single digits again, or maybe even 0 touches. Who knows? The way this backfield has played out this season, you can't trust anybody.
I guess it didn't take long for Christian McCaffrey to get his elite rollback.
Yeah.
82% of snaps, 27 opportunities. He had his second highest fantasy output of the season, only behind that big 40-point game he had in the second game with the 49ers when he caught one, threw one, ran one in. Brock Purdy was peppering McCaffrey with targets with 10. He had 10 total, 9 from Purdy. And McCaffrey ran around on 82% of dropbacks. Remember when you said by week 14, he should be good to go, can be considered as the overall RB1? Nah. It didn't even take that long. You know what I'm saying?
Well,
like, he is sitting. It does stand because we didn't rank him as an RB1, as the RB1 this week. But going into this week, like, as of right now, going into Monday night, he's sitting as the current overall RB1 for week 13 in PPR leagues.
So, yeah, it stands. The quote stands. I said by week 14, he would be the RB1. I didn't expect it to come this fast, especially with Jimmy Garoppolo going down. That's one thing I would have expected, kind of hamper the offense a little bit, but it looks like Brock Purdy is going to be able to get it done. Maybe it's just the 49ers being such a good fundamental team and such a well-structured and built team that any quarterback can succeed. Trey Lance, I think, would have been fine. That's why we were drafting him so high. Jimmy Garoppolo comes in, he fills in perfectly fine. It's a perfect system for a young quarterback.
We've seen it before, too. We've seen Nick Mullins control the offense relatively well. Who else? There was some other.
CJ Beathard never really did.
CJ Beathard. Well, no, he did too. CJ Beathard, when he came in, he was solid. Like, he wasn't good, but he was solid enough where like they were able to, get it done for the most part. So
Yeah.
this team is well coached for the most part. They were able to beat a good Dolphins team with Purdy as a quarterback for the entire time.
Yeah. And Christian McCaffrey is a big reason why. And it looks like he's going to have that role back. The receiving game is where he's going to make his money. And yeah, that's gonna be good for him, especially with the, like you said, the check down. That's one thing not a lot of young quarterbacks do is check down. They try to do too much, and we saw that kind of with Zach Wilson, I think. But Brock Purdy, he should be able to get it done, especially for Christian McCaffrey. And Christian McCaffrey didn't look like he was hampered at all by any type of injury that he might have had coming in. Obviously, he carried a designation for part of the week, but he looks like he's back and healthy and perfectly fine. He's ready to make it for the stretch run. And like I said, RB1 moving forward.
And by the way, it was Jordan Mason, not Tyrion Davis-Price, as McCaffrey's backup. In case you're interested in that, it wasn't TDP again. We thought it might have been TDP because the special teams thing, whatever. But in case you missed it, Jimmy Garoppolo, he suffered a broken foot very early in the game. He's out for the year. Brock Purdy came in as relief. He was the last pick in the NFL draft, which made him Mr. Irrelevant. Now he's pretty relevant at this point. The 49ers did sign Josh Johnson off the Broncos practice squad. He was the Broncos' best quarterback, so I don't know what they were doing there. But the last time Josh Johnson played, he played for Baltimore. Last year in a game against Cincinnati, threw for 300 yards and 2 touchdowns. He came in after an injury to Mike White for the Jets last year, threw for 300 yards and 3 touchdowns. So he's capable in case he eventually becomes the guy over Purdy. Baker Mayfield was just released this morning by the Panthers. Great. I'm hoping the 49ers don't pick him up. Okay.
Right.
But anyway, moving forward, there was a shift in the Dolphins' backfield this week. Jeff Wilson had only 1 carry for 3 yards. That was his night. That's it. Raheem Mostert had 7 carries. That was the totality of the running back opportunities for against the 49ers. But moving forward, it doesn't look like Jeff Wilson had the 1A job locked down like we thought. So these two play the Chargers next week. It's possible both do well, but now it's kind of up in the air in terms of, who really has this job. And as of now, it has flipped to Mostert having the upper hand in this backfield. Mostert also led in snaps at 61%, and he ran 4 more routes than Jeff Wilson in this game, unfortunately.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't expect too much out of this backfield, moving forward. I think that it was a little bit inflated what we've seen the past 2 weeks out of Jeff Wilson and Raheem Mostert.
Yeah, it was. And, if one person had like 70% of the opportunity, which we thought Jeff Wilson would have, then maybe, it's a good offense. So that running back should get some points, but we'll see moving forward what happens. This podcast is getting a little long here, so let's just roll through a bunch of other stuff that we wanted to get through. Tua apparently has an ankle injury, but it shouldn't be too serious. Just monitor that in case it becomes a thing, but I don't think it will. Chiefs Bengals. Samaje Perine looking better than Joe Mixon out there. 21 carries for 106 yards. He was doing his thing, man. He has 3 top 10 finishes and 2 top 3 finishes over the last 3 weeks, assuming that one of the running backs tonight don't ball out. So when Mixon's out, Samaje Perine is going to be that dude. Jamar Chase, he looked good in his return. He's top 5 once again amongst wide receivers. Chiefs backfield was a 2-man split between Pacheco and McKinnon. McKinnon started to get a little bit more involved in the run game, but Melvin Gordon wasn't active yet. Pacheco, he didn't control all the work on the ground, but he's still a low-end RB2 moving forward. Juju only had 4 targets in this game, but that shouldn't be overly surprising. That accounted for a 15% target share, and his target share for the season was 16%. It's part of the reason I wanted to sell Juju during that crazy stretch that he had several weeks back. All that crazy production he had, wasn't on any elite target share or anything like that. It was going to fall back down to earth. And if you did sell him after that stretch, you didn't have to deal with his last 4 weeks. I'm still starting Juju as a high-end wide receiver 3, mainly because he still has Patrick Mahomes as his quarterback, but pretty tough matchup against Denver next week. He sees Denver twice in the next 4 weeks.
That's tough.
That's tough.
That's tough. Yeah.
Hayden Hurst left this game with the calf injury, so you might not have him next week. You're going to have to pick up for some random other, tight ends that you have on the waiver wire.
It's back to the streaming table.
Oh, yeah. I will be remiss to not mention Josh Jacobs with another huge game, 26 carries for 144 yards and a touchdown. Dude is balling. He's carrying people to the fantasy playoffs. Devonta Adams also carrying people to the fantasy playoffs. 177 yards receiving in this game, his fourth 120-plus yard receiving game in the last 5 weeks, and his third 2-touchdown game during that span. Want to mention Keenan Allen real quick. Started the game really slow, but he ended up with a pretty nice line. 14 targets to end the game, 35-yard touchdown on that really nice contested catch in the end zone on 4th and 12. Josh Palmer, pretty reliable lately, when these other wide receivers miss time. So with Mike Williams out, 10 targets. He's averaging 10 targets over his last 6 games, surprisingly. So he's kind of locked in as a high-end PPR wide receiver 3, something like that at this point. Mm-hmm. And that's pretty much it, man. Nothing too notable out of the Cowboys-Colts game other than Tony Pollard still balling out. They absolutely killed them. Jason Garrett, before the game, did you see this, that he called it for the Cowboys to win by 40? It was close at halftime, and then he was asked about it again at halftime. He's like, it can still happen. And it almost did. The score ended up being 54-19. So it ended up happening. Ridiculous. Let me ask you a question real quick before we end it out. Michael Gallup, 2 touchdowns this week.
Yep.
They have a good matchup next week. Would you start him as like a low-end wide receiver 3 high-end flex play?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the way he's playing, he's looking more and more healthy. That's been the difference. He's been coming off that injury since he came back early in the season, and he wasn't ever right, but he's finally looking like that again. If you saw, they threw the fade to him in the corner. That's his signature. It's just a fade. He's liable to score a touchdown every week, and he's just sideline technician. He looked good. The other thing, takeaway for me out of this, was Zeke actually got it done, even with Tony Pollard doing his thing. The run game has become a huge part of this Cowboys offense. So it looks like both of them are startable. Obviously, Tony Pollard has the upside, but Zeke has a fine floor where you don't have to be worried about starting him. If he's your RB2, I'm not sweating it. I'm pretty confident with him.
I would say so. Okay. I think that'll do it, guys, for this episode. We appreciate you tuning in. We appreciate you, listening every single day, 5 days a week, all season long. Good luck tonight. Hopefully, whatever you need tonight to get the W, hopefully you guys get it. We'll be back tomorrow for our waiver wire episode. We'll see you guys later. Peace.